Lats are probably the most important muscle group for getting you that coveted V-taper. And the V-taper is probably, at least in my experience of coaching, the number one thing that people want. They want that appearance of, the upside down triangle. Some people say they want abs, some people say they want a bigger chest, but more often than not when I get on sales calls, it's the V-taper. This makes lats arguably the most important muscle group for overall aesthetics. It's important in all areas of aesthetics. It's important first of all for looking good on a bodybuilding stage, the V-taper. It's important for looking good on a beach. It helps you look big in a t-shirt, and in my experience, gym girls especially seem to say that it's the best and most attractive muscle group. So this is a muscle group that you're going to want to make sure that you train frequently, train hard, and train effectively. And to keep things simple for you, I will give you 3 lat exercises that, if trained, will most effectively train your lats. I say 3 because I think that distilling lat training down to a tier list is probably simplifying things a bit too much to me. The lats are an extremely big muscle group, and I think that to maximally train them, you're probably going to want to use more than one exercise. And this is partly because there are roughly 2 heads of the lat, depending on who you ask. There's the upper thoracic region, which we will call the upper lat, and there's the lower lumbar pelvis coastal region, which we will call the lower lat. And based on some of the comments I got from my programming video, this might come as a surprise to some of you, but I should really clear up what I meant in that video. I didn't do as good of a job as I hoped I would have. I am not someone who advocates for doing one exercise per muscle group. I just questioned whether regional hypertrophy within a specific muscle head was something that was all that real, and if so, all that practical. And some people were saying, oh, the incline bench works the upper chest better and the flat bench works the middle chest better. I don't even disagree with that. I think it's worth implementing both of those into your program. I was just wondering, particularly within bicep training, which is what I was focusing on for that video, whether a bicep exercise can specifically favor the proximal region or the distal region of the muscle head. Not whether you can favor or bias certain regions of the muscle in general. I was talking specifically about regions within a head, not regions within an entire muscle belly. I could also be wrong about that regional hypertrophy bit, but the data isn't really all super convincing to me right now. If you want more specifics as to why, then you can watch that video. I'm not gonna rehash it here. So with that being said, let's actually start the video. Let's go over the functions of the lat, which are scapula depression, shoulder extension, and shoulder adduction. And with that in mind, let's start this video off by talking about horizontal pulling exercises. Now, I don't actually think it's necessary that you have a horizontal pulling exercise and a vertical pulling exercise. You can probably live with one of either of them. I rarely trained horizontal pulling for most of my life, like the image you see in the thumbnail, that all came from vertical pulling. Could my back have gotten bigger if I incorporated horizontal pulling? Possibly, but when I did start incorporating horizontal pulling, it's not like my back blew up or something like that, or it's not like I noticed new muscle being revealed once I started doing horizontal pulling exercises. Frankly, I just started doing them out of curiosity at first, and nowadays it's more so out of necessity because of my shoulder injuries from the car accident. But really, it doesn't hurt doing these exercises either, and they might bias certain parts of the muscle better, and that might end up contributing to a more holistic back development. So I think it's probably worth including, to be honest with you. It's probably likely that I would have gotten slightly more back development if I incorporated horizontal and vertical pulling movement for my entire lifting career, but ultimately I do think that it didn't make that big of a difference, and you could just choose to do one or the other and still probably get 90% of your results. So horizontal pulls can work on either the upper or the lower lats more, depending on how you pull it. If you're doing a dumbbell or cable horizontal pull, you can contract your muscles either higher or lower. If you contract higher, you'll work on the upper lats. If you contract lower, you'll work on the lower lats. Or more accurate to say that you'll bias the higher lats or you'll bias the lower lats, because you can't exactly isolate either of them. So with that being said, what exercises should you do? I would err against the barbell row personally. The barbell row uses a lot of secondary muscles like the hamstrings and the lower back, and spine to keep you upright. This takes tension away from the lats. It's a great exercise if you want total back hypertrophy, but inasmuch as lats specifically are concerned, I do have my doubts about that being the most effective exercise. But if you are to do them, you should use a closer grip. And while we're at it, we should talk about the grip length that you should be using for horizontal pulling. The wide grip horizontal pulls will be less effective at engaging the lats. This is because of leverages. You'll be working more of the mid traps and rear delts than you will be the lats, or you'll shift a lot of attention away from the lats and towards the mid traps and rear delts. So with that being said, I think that the best lat exercise for horizontal pulling is the T-bar row or machine row. I would slightly favor the T-bar row overall because there's absolutely no spine stabilization involved. You may end up using your hamstrings a bit to keep yourself upright, but it's not nearly as much activity, and I do think that the actual movement comes entirely from your back. So long as you keep your form straight, everything is going to be coming from the back, and maybe towards the very end, if you're lifting really heavy, you'll notice a little bit in your hamstrings, but it's very minuscule. Next, we'll be talking about vertical pulling movements. Vertical pulling movements work on shoulder extension, adduction, and scapular pulling. This works on your lats really well. If you do a shoulder width pull-up, or maybe go slightly more narrow than that, then it'll work more on your upper lats. I don't really recommend going all the way super narrow with the pull-ups, just because I feel my forearms start to take over a lot. But if you go slightly more narrow than shoulder width, then you'll definitely get to feel your upper lats work a lot. And if you do a more wide grip pull-up, you're gonna work on your lower lats. This may seem surprising to you, but try it for yourself. Do a medium or close grip pull-up motion with no weight, and compare it to the wide grip motion with no weight, and feel your lat activity. You'll realize that you feel it more in your lower lats when you do the wide grip pull-up motion than when you do the close grip pull-up motion. If you aren't super perceptive, you can try doing it with a little bit of weight and seeing what happens. If you still don't feel it, then you can try doing this with a straight arm. When you put your straight arm up and down, it's putting you through shoulder extension, and when you put your straight arm side to side, it puts you through shoulder adduction, and the shoulder adduction seems to work on your lower lat better. As for the grip, the more you supinate your wrists, the more you're going to be working on your biceps. You technically actually get a better stretch on your lats when you do something like the chin-ups compared to the pull-ups, when you do supinated lat pull-downs as opposed to pronated lat pull-downs. It's actually this supination that stretches out your lats more, but you also remove a lot of tension from the lats and put that onto your biceps. So on the net, I don't think it actually helps. As we saw in the previous segment, depending on how you do your horizontal pulls, you can bias either the lower half or the upper half of the lat. So what I recommend is whatever you choose to bias for the horizontal pull, you do the opposite for the vertical pull. If you want to work on the upper lats and you're biasing the lower lats with the horizontal pull, then you should be doing close grip, like relatively narrow grip pull-ups or lat pull down. And if you want to bias the lower lat because you're biasing the upper lat with the horizontal pull, then you can be doing relatively somewhat wide grip pull-ups. And then of course, if you want to balance both of them, you do medium grip. We're Goldilocks now. A note on wider grip pull-ups, hence why I said like relatively wider grip pull-ups, not absolute super wide grip pull-ups, is that when you go too wide, you might lose some range of motion. So I would say go relatively wide, but don't go so wide that you're starting to lose range of motion. So for the specific exercise, what should you be doing? Pull-ups or lat pull-downs? Yes, we all knew that it was coming down to these two exercises. Pull-ups are far more fun and cool, but the lat pull-down does seem to isolate the back better for a lot of people while minimizing the stability element. However, here's the catch to it. I do believe that if you were to do weighted pull-ups, that this core involvement issue would be absolved. This is because the weight dangling from your belt acts like a kind of anchor, stabilizing your body. So I would say, practically speaking, if you can't do pull-ups, I'd recommend doing the lat pull-down. But if you can do pull-ups and you can do a lot of pull-ups, I'd recommend doing weighted pull-ups. I think that if you had to choose between the two, I do think that the weighted pull-up is actually better than the lat pull-down, and the large reason for this is because it provides a greater stretch. Don't get me wrong, you can get an awesome stretch with the lat pull-down, but the machines usually cap out around 200 or 250 pounds. But if you were, say, 180 pounds yourself and you're repping out 75-pound weighted pull-ups for reps, then you'll get an even better and bigger and deeper stretch due to how much weight is pulling you down, because that's how gravity works. This is all theoretical, I suppose, because no one can really study the weighted pull-up, because frankly, only freaks can do weighted pull-ups. Most people can't do a single pull-up, and so asking them to do pull-ups with weight dangling around them, that's totally out of the question. So to summarize again, if you can't do too many pull-ups, do pronated lat pull-downs, and if you can do a ton of pull-ups, consider doing weighted pull-ups. So far, all the exercises we've done have incorporated the biceps to a significant degree. Even the pronated lat pull-down and pull-ups are working the biceps to a large degree. So much so that I actually consider pull-ups and lat pull-downs to be half a set of biceps. So if you're counting how many sets you do a week, I think you should honestly count pull-ups and pull-downs as like half a bicep set. Anyways, that's beside the point. I think that if you want to maximize your lats, you're likely gonna have to do some isolation work. And for this, we have pullovers and all of their variants. Doing this makes the entire lat feel really well worked. And of course, as you do this movement, you feel absolutely no bicep involvement, meaning your central nervous system can delegate all of its resources into focusing solely on the lats. And for this, we have dumbbell pullovers, machine pullovers, cable pullovers, and front lever raises. First of all, I think dumbbell pullovers are the worst because they have the least consistent resistance curve. A lot of tension on the lats at the bottom, and then halfway through, all the tension immediately leaves. I think that the front lever raises are either the second or the third best. The first issue is similar to that of the weighted pull-up. Nobody can actually do this thing, so I have a hard time justifying any reality where I put this thing on top. Secondly though, it's really hard to push to failure. This is because a singular rep takes a lot of effort, and since you can't change your body weight on the fly, you can't make the exercise easier. Think about it like this. If you have 100 energy points to delegate to the lats, and each front lever raise uses up 12 points, you'll get up to 96 points, but then there's still 4 points for you left that you're missing out on. You could say that you could just do half reps, but maybe it's just me, but half reps feel really terrible with this exercise. Not to mention, for whatever reason, I can bust out tons of half reps after the fact, after I've already exhausted all of my full reps. Something generally just feels really off about it. You can modify the front lever and make it easier by crunching your legs in before you start so that you don't have to lift your entire fully extended leg. But then that starts to work on your core a lot and take attention away from your lats. But that being said, there are some advantages to the front lever, where if you are strong enough, you can pull yourself in a full 180 degrees and get the entire range of motion, something that the other exercises can't really do. So, I mean, you could argue for it to be better than I'm making it out to be, and I actually do think this exercise is very unappreciated. It's a respectable exercise. The cable pullover is what I'm going to rank number 2. This has a lot of the benefits of the front lever, being that constant tension, but it's much more customizable. I do think, however, that this one seems to work on my core a lot more. Weirdly enough, people think that the core is worked a lot in the front lever, but to me and my cool friends, it's really not. I actually feel my core during the pullover for whatever reason. Maybe it's just me, but yeah, that's why I can't really rank this number 1. The machine pullover, however, is probably the best out of them all. It can provide a big stretch and it has constant tension throughout the entire movement, and it doesn't seem to engage my core as much. Unfortunately, a lot of gyms don't really have this machine, so in practice I generally recommend the cable pullover to most people, and the dumbbell pullover sometimes as well. This seems to be the most practical for most people. So, to give you a practical recommendation that I believe will be most applicable to most people watching this video, do moderately wide grip pull downs, use a slightly high angle and narrow grip on the T-bar row, and do cable pullovers. If you skip to this part of the video to find out what the 3 are, then those are the 3 exercises I'd recommend. If you want more nuance, which you may really want that nuance to modify the exercises to your specific needs and your specific capabilities, then watch the full video. That being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you all next time. Peace.